Hi, this is Steve Rigolosi, and tonight on Forgotten Mysteries, I have for you His Name Was Death by Fredric Brown. And this is copyright 1954 by Dutton, and it's one of their gilt-edged mysteries. The logo is here. It's actually pretty small. Interesting point about this book that I'm holding here is that it is an ex-library copy that comes from a military library at Fort McClellan, Alabama. So if any of our men and women in uniform are watching this video, a shout out to Fort McClellan and a thank you for your service. An interesting thing is when you buy ex-library books, often they're in pretty crappy shape. They're dog-eared, they've got tape marks and paste marks and writing, and the bindings are kittywampus, and the flaps and the cover, the jacket are all crackled and creased and falling apart. But this book is in beautiful shape, and that's why I bought it. And part of me wonders if that's because it was part of a military library. I mean, I can imagine a military librarian being, like they say, Conan the Librarian, just being very tough about returning books in beautiful, almost perfect shape. So a little bit about Fredric Brown. He certainly is not forgotten. I use Forgotten Mysteries as kind of this umbrella term for the older mysteries that I read. But he was a very, very respected writer, super prolific, wrote hundreds of short stories for the pulps, also wrote science fiction and fantasy, wrote social commentary, satire, and also wrote mysteries. He's probably best known for his first mystery, which won the Edgar. The title of that one is The Fabulous Clipjoint, and it features a duo of an uncle and a nephew who is learning kind of the private eye biz from his uncle. And that's a nice dynamic. You don't really see that a lot, but there's warmth, and there's family in there, and I think that's part of the key to the success of the books. In addition to them telling great stories, is that relationship between the uncle and the nephew is really, really nice. If you can find a copy of The Fabulous Clipjoint for under $500 or $1,000, I'd say snatch it up. For some reason, Fredric Brown's books are super hard to find in nice hardback editions. I found this one at an out-of-the-way bookstore, and I haggled on the price a little bit. But they are tough to find, so I keep my eyes peeled for a deal, but they are few and far between. Just a little side note about the Fabulous Clipjoint is, a clip joint is a bar that is known for the exorbitant price of its drinks. And when I hear that word, I think, has there ever been a bar in history that has not been a clip joint, right? I mean, I can't think of a single bar or restaurant I've been to in New York City or the region where drinks are not massively overpriced. I mean, a glass of wine is $14, a martini is $12 or $13. It's crazy. So lots of clip joints out there. I guess some of them fabulous. So let me tell you a little bit about the plot of this book. Our anti-hero, our main character, is Darius Khan, and he owns a small printing business, kind of eking by, squeaking along. There's a lot of competition in the business, so he just really makes enough money to get by. And he finally hits on a way to make it big. Because he's such a good engraver, he decides to become a counterfeiter. And he's a very good counterfeiter. And as the book opens, he's just created a batch of really pristine, beautiful $10 bills that look and feel like the real thing. And this is sort of the beginning of his journey for himself, where he's finally going to make it rich and get the money he deserves by printing all this trash, they call it in the counterfeiting business, and going to different parts of the country and passing it off. And at the same time, he becomes not a master of disguise, but he becomes very well versed in disguising himself with wigs and, cheek fillers and phony facial hair, so that when word gets out that there are counterfeit bills floating around, that they won't be traced back to him. So he's got it all figured out. I should also mention that another negative quality of Darius Khan is that he has murdered his wife. He comes home early from work one night and he finds another man's overcoat on the coat rack, and he finds his wife stark naked. He knows that she's been fooling around. She doesn't deny it. Meanwhile, the guy has fled. Darius kind of whacks her and then chokes her to death. A rather ugly scene. And because he's smart and clever, he thinks of a way to alibi himself very quickly, and he gets away with it. There is no, it is assumed that that her lover was the one who murdered her, or that it was a robbery gone bad or whatever. So he walks free. And as a result, he develops quite a bit of hubris about his own excellence. He thinks, oh, I got away. I committed the perfect murder. And he also thinks, if I can do it once, I can do it again. And he prides himself on thinking, many, many steps ahead, and then stopping himself from doing things that could ultimately, through 4 or 5 or 6 rather tenuous connections, point to him. So he's got a plan. He's got a plan to counterfeit his way through life. But as always happens in these books, something goes wrong. He has stored his first batch of $10 bills in his safe at work. And by accident, his secretary circulates 9 of those bills. And so much of the book becomes about Darius's chasing down of these counterfeit $10 bills, trying to get them all back so that they cannot be, tied back to him. And so there's a little bit of a caper element there that's fun. Of course, $10 bills don't stay in anybody's wallet very long, so he ends up going through these very, circuitous routes to get these bills. And because he has committed murder and now thinks of himself as an expert murderer, he's not averse to murdering again to keep his counterfeiting business going. And that's really what drives the plot. So I wanted to point out one thing to you. I love when authors do clever things with their chapter numbers or chapter titles or whatever. And you can see here, the name of each chapter begins with his name was or her name was, closing with the final chapter, his name was Death, which of course is the name of the book. And I love that. It was a fun way to go through the book, and it also kind of gives you a clue to Brown's narrative style, in that he follows one character until that character hits a dead end or can't really do anything more, or just has gotten as much information as he can get. And then the baton gets passed to another character who is followed, and so forth and so on until you get to the end of the book. So these aren't first-person narratives. They are third-person narratives. But it's still fun to kind of watch the writer at his craft, figuring out how to tell his story, how to keep the reader aware of what's going on, of feeding information to the reader to continue the suspense, but by focusing on different characters. Someone else who did this a lot and very well was Kenneth Fearing. Check out The Big Clock, which is one of my top 10 mysteries of all time. There's also another writer. She wrote mostly historical novels. Nora Lofts often had a book divided into 4, 5, or 6 sections, each with a different narrator. And that can really be a great way of developing character or showing alternate perspectives and analyzing differences in social structure, social class, and so forth. And Brown does a really nice job of that here. He also delivers a humdinger of an ending, I must say. Literally, I got to within 3 pages of the end of the book. I said to myself, there is no way he can pull this entire plot together and resolve everything in 3 pages. There's just no way. And I thought, looking ahead, this might be one of those unresolved endings. I don't necessarily mind an unresolved ending. I like them sometimes, actually, but I know a lot of mystery readers hate an unresolved ending. Never fear if you're in that category. This ending is resolved, and it's pretty brilliant. It's so brilliant, actually, that it kind of took me aback, because when I first read those 3 pages, I thought, this is not fair play. This comes out of nowhere. What the hell, man? Like, this is not cool. But when I look back, I realized how very cleverly Brown had laid all his clues, had laid all his clues in the earlier pages of the novel, so subtly, so wonderfully, so beautifully, that when you look back after you've read this humdinger of an ending, you say, ah, Fredric, you got me. You got me good. And, I bow to any writer who can do that. And as I understand, this was sort of a trademark of his, the surprise ending, a trope that many mystery readers, including me, love. If you like that, let me also recommend Margaret Miller, who was known for the twists in the last sentence of her book. Not just the last chapter, the last sentence. God, she was good. But this video is about Fredric Brown. I like to sort of talk about maybe some of the things that were not as, that I didn't love as much. And this is really a small thing. There were some quotidian details in this book, very much of he took a shower, he cleaned his bedroom, she straightened up the dining room or whatever. These just like very sort of details of life that, we all go through, but aren't interesting, right? Opening up a can of soup and pouring it into a pot and cooking it is not fun. It's not fun to read about. So I thought that maybe this book could have been cut by 15 pages to get rid of some of that kind of quotidian detail. But many of the contemporary novels that I read, I think should have been cut by 100 pages. So to have maybe 10 or 15 extra pages of a little bit of suet in there, I can live with. Especially because it's such an enjoyable reading experience, very easy to read. The famous story about Fredric Brown is apparently he hated to write and would do anything to put it off until he just couldn't put it off any longer. And so it's hard to imagine that someone who hated writing could do such a good job with it. He makes it look effortless, right? So he might have sweated out every sentence, every comma, every period, but he just makes it look easy. And that's the mark of really a great mystery writer, I think, where they do really interesting, unique, different, brilliant things, and it just all seems like it just flowed out of their pen or out of their typewriter with nary a thought or worry. So that's what I've got for you tonight. His Name Was Death by Fredric Brown. Definitely check it out. I think you can probably get this on Amazon, Kindle, or for some of the other e-readers. His hardcover books, I think I mentioned before, it's really hard to find them. They're like, it took me years to find this one, so I suspect it'll take me years to find another one. But hey, life is about the journey and the hunt, right? Not about finally the acquisition. Although, of course, what book lover does not love acquiring a book that they've always wanted? Okay, so on that philosophical note, I thank you for watching and have a good night.